Parents, the first 4 months of a kid's life are huge. This is a really crucial time developmentally, neurologically, there's so many changes happening. But this is also a pretty hard time, right? You are recovering from birth. You're trying to adapt to this new routine, whether it's your first kid or your fifth. There's hormonal changes from that postpartum pregnancy transition. There's so much going on. It can be really hard, but it is so key. So I want to give you some frameworks of what to look for, what to think about with kids, how to know if everything is on track or if there's something off developmentally, and what you can do about it. So there's really 4 things that we're looking for with kids. Everyone's a little bit unique. The timing might look a little bit differently kid to kid, but there's still 4 key steps that every kid needs to go through to make sure that this early developmental season of life is on track as it should be. First thing that we need to do is make sure that we are eating. Eating is the starting point to all this. Really, immediately after birth, a baby should be latching. They should be able to nurse. They should be able to feed without any struggles with that. So that looks like a strong latch. There's not a preference side to side. They're able to swallow, bring that food in. They're not spitting up. That eating process is going as it's supposed to. So eating is number 1. Sleeping, that is the next one. This is needed for everybody, right? Because you're exhausted as a parent. We need to have our kids able to be soothed, able to be relaxed, able to be at ease, and napping. They should, within the first handful of weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks into life, have a routine where there's some wake windows, some nap windows, and there's a little bit of a structure to the day. I don't really like using the word schedule. That seems too rigid, but structure. There's an ebb and a flow. We get changed, we feed, we sleep, and we just kind of go through that routine over and over again. So we should be relaxed, we should be ease, there should be cycles to that. So eating, sleeping, pooping is the next one. This is the other end of the eating, right? We need to get that food out, which means that our belly digestive process should be pretty smooth. We don't want them grunting and straining and fussing and working really hard to get poops out. And I don't want there being a bunch of gaps in between them. They should be having these bowel movements every single day, not working hard at it, not grunting and not forcing it. Eating, sleeping, pooping. The last one is motor control, movement. This is what changes throughout that age range. Early on, there's not a whole lot of motor control that we really need to be doing. In fact, we want them to be relaxed. We want them to be at ease and not stiff, not tense. The earliest thing to see is there a head rotation preference, right? Is that kid, when they're in the car seat, when they're laying on their back, do they always seem to have their head cocked to the same side, or is it always turned in the same direction? Do they have a default mode? That is definitely a red flag, definitely a negative sign that motor control is not on track. But then it goes beyond that. We need to get good head and neck control, head and neck movements. We need to be comfortable on our belly, able to spend a ton of time on our belly. And then ultimately, that is going to, near the end of that, turn into more wiggling, more motor control near that 3-4 months mark. But belly time is the key with that. Kind of goes hand in hand with some of these things would be smiling, right? They should be interacting with you a couple months in. We don't want to see a tense kid. Their hands should be loose, their hands should be open, their hands should be relaxed, not squeezing all the time. Those are what normal function looks like for eating, sleeping, pooping, and motor control and movement. When it's going wrong, what might it be? That's a stiff or a tense kid. Maybe they're holding their head up right at birth. They're not latching, they're not feeding very well, or it's then not staying down because they're spitting up, or it's not coming out the other end and they're constipated, they're not going every day, there's gaps between visits. Yes, I know you've been told it's okay if breastfed babies go multiple days without poops, maybe here and there, but that should not be a regular thing. And you know this, if you've had a kid that's been through that because they're not comfortable, they're not happy when that is going on. So we want to see that daily, that good, healthy GI system. So those are what it looks like when it's not good. Why might that be happening? Most common reasons are either birth trauma, birth intervention that led to some tension, some damage in that sensitive nervous system, maybe pregnancy stress that got that kid stuck in survival mode. But the last thing I want to leave you with is that this is not just important for this season of life, right? You don't want to just help them survive right now. They don't grow out of these things, right? That's the thing that I hate that parents are told all the time, that they'll grow out of it. I love this chart that really walks through developmentally and this hierarchy of development. So many of these pathways, you might not be able to see this. The yellow one is sensory, the blue is language, higher cognitive function is red there. So many of those neural connections, all those brain connections are happening in this first 12 months of life. They're not going to grow out of it if they get stuck in this mode of stress, if they get stuck in this mode of dysfunction, instead of just a baby problem. Now this turns into older kids, right? motor, eat, sleep, poop, and motor is what the need is early on, but then we do need to communicate. We do need to have this higher level focus and brain regulation and working hard in school and all of these later things. And when those show up at 3 or 6 or 10, we start to think of them as that current problem, whereas really it's just the continuum of those early ones. So that's the last reminder, last thought I have for you, is that don't just assume that your kid will grow out of this. Don't just wait and see or say, you know what, it's fine. Eventually they won't be spitting up. Eventually they won't be colicky. We've got to address those problems at that point, because otherwise the colicky kid turns into the kid with ear infections, which turns into the one with tonsils and adenoids inflamed, or chronic coughs and colds, and on and on and on. And that is not the path that we want. So if that makes sense, if that sparks any sort of like, oh wow, I think that sounds like my kid, please reach out. Let us know what other questions you have or concerns you have, and let us know if you want to get scanned, right? That would be the next step, is actually doing these scans that let us measure and track and quantify what's going on internally. Is your kid dealing with some of these underlying stressors that are showing up as messed up eating, sleeping, pooping, and moving, or is everything looking okay? So we're here to help. Let me know what you need, and can't wait to meet you in the office soon and help your family thrive.